What do you think most athletes, in inverted commas says, or in brackets says rugby players, overlook in their pre-season? So pre-season is the block between our off-season block and our in-season specific block, right? Usually it's 4 to 6 weeks long. And generally speaking, it's incredibly focused on building aerobic capacity. So in our off-season, we do 3 or 4 big, heavy, weighty gym sessions per week, try to make us as strong as possible, then try to make us as powerful as possible. Some people will take that power block and put it into their preseason bit, but generally speaking, preseason will look like a lot of running out on the pitch, trying to get players back in shape to be able to go and play a game. For me personally, there's 2 massive areas people miss out on during the preseason block, and there's one kind of third area that probably should be brought in as well. The first thing is we do almost no movement prep. What this essentially means is we go from 2 months, ideally in our off season, of big heavy squats, pulls, presses, rows, really heavy things in the gym, not moving fast, not springing around the place, not jumping, landing, sprinting, or bounding. And we go straight out for day 1 and we start running a load of suicides. And what happens? Well, by day 2 of training, we have a load of people with inflamed ankles, knees, hips, and backs, because all of those tendon and ligament structures haven't absorbed any massive meaningful load at speed in months, right? They played their last game in April. It's now the first week in August, and we just asked them to sprint again when they've done a lot of, even though the barbells might be moving quickly, they've done a lot of relatively slow, relatively non-explosive movements in the gym. So the first thing people miss out on is they don't do any movement prep to get them ready for their preseason piece. And I think the first 2 weeks of preseason should be quite measured and quite light on the feet. We can even bring that into the last 2 weeks of the off season to start prepping them. Small jumps, small hurdle hops, small agility pieces on the ladders, skipping, jumping, landing, all that stuff is massively missed out on. And we end up losing players for a portion of every preseason block because they're not appropriately prepared to go back out. In my opinion, the best thing to do is once or twice per week before their gym session, bring them out on the field, do 15 to 20 minutes of sprint tech with them. That sprint tech session, although it won't be massively influential to their overall fitness level, will start to get their ankles, knees, hips, and backs ready for sprinting, ready for that kind of big stretch shortening cycle load, and will have them well prepped. The second thing I think people really miss out on in their preseason is they basically lose all of the gym work that they've just worked so incredibly hard to maintain. So this is due to 2 facts. The first thing is, generally speaking, in the off-season, players get a bit too fat and they lose that fat then during their off-season because they're doing so much running, and that loss in overall body mass just murders their strength numbers. So in the off-season, this leads into our pre-season. Don't get too flabby and don't get too fat. It'll help you hold on to those strength numbers then when you're in pre-season. The second fact that comes along with this is because the running volume tends to be so high, or the on-the-foot conditioning numbers tend to be so high during pre-season, we lose our strength numbers because we simply can't get them into the gym, squatting, pulling, pressing, rowing, and doing all that other good stuff. So you have to keep some semblance of strength training in there. Obviously, you're not going to be clanging and banging away in the weight room like you would have been in June, July, and in the start of August, but you have to be doing some amount of strength training during your preseason, or else all of that off-season work is a waste, because you'll go to play your first game with 1RM numbers that are essentially very, very similar to what they would have been when you finished the season last year. The final thing, and I kind of said this is 2.5 things, because the final thing, certainly down to the level of the skill level of the players you're talking about, is I think preseason might not necessarily prepare players very well for actually playing the game of rugby or actually doing the sport they're preparing for. We tend to have a massive focus on physical development, a massive focus on making those players into the size, shape, and fitness levels we want them to be, but they mightn't necessarily have enough tactical awareness brought in within that first 6 to 8 weeks of the season, where maybe it's that player's first year playing with the team, or maybe it's their first year in a starting role or a more senior role. They should probably have a few more touch points with the skill elements of the sport, whether that's bringing a rugby ball into some of the sprinting work or handling work. Maybe that's getting players into small group units and talking about their specific roles within those group units. Any of those things I think might be lost out on in the standard traditional preseason.